Hi, my name is Nicole, licensed clinician, and we're here talking about everyday things that impact our mental health and fitness. And we're talking about fulfillment. We talked about fulfillment in careers, we talked about fulfillment in friendships. Now I want to talk about fulfillment in family relationships. And obviously, family relationships are very complex, right? It could be biological family, it could be adopted family, it could be chosen family, um, family of close friends that maybe spent a little bit more time with or found a little bit more solace with. So it can be whatever it means for you, right? The word family. We're talking very, very, very generally. But how do we find fulfillment in those relationships? And sometimes that means really asking for what we need. Um, where all of us are dealing with parents or grandparents or people of those generations that were raised in a particular way because society said XYZ um, is the best way to deal with children, right? And as children growing up, maybe some of our needs weren't met, not because somebody was a bad parent, but because at the time, the common knowledge of what children needed was vastly different than what it is today. The world of psychology and developmental psychology has exploded in the past, like, I don't know, 40 years. And now we know a lot more about how our behaviors as a parent, especially in those early years of life, influence that child and then also influences their adulthood, how they are, what experiences they have, and such. So all of that to say that there's maybe a certain amount of forgiveness and understanding that can go with like, hey, you know what, like I might not ever have the relationship with my mom or my dad or the grandmother or grandparents that raised me that I would really want or need from this one or two specific people. However, um, this is something that they do really well and that I really appreciate about that relationship. And so that's where the fulfillment of that relationship is going to come into play, is seeing this person for what they were able to do positively, what they were able to give positively, and then accepting that, like, hey, you know what, like I might not get everything in one place here. And so that's when you turn to other family members, maybe, or other close friends, or again, friends, parents, things like that, um, parental figures, whatever the case may be. Um, and then kind of seeing, like, hey, you know what, like, this is maybe another thing that I really wish that I had growing up, or maybe that I need now that I didn't even realize I was lacking until now. And, maybe hey, I'm a parent now, and I really like the way that I see my coworker talking to her children or talking about her children, and maybe in that way I can get some of that parental feedback and be able to use some of those skills that I didn't really have. I wasn't taught growing up or didn't see growing up, and now I see it. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. So it's not necessarily being like, hey, like now I have like 47 parent figures because they're filling in the gaps for all of the needs that I didn't get met. Um, but looking for fulfillment of those needs from other maybe like more creative outlets. Same thing goes for like sibling relationships, right? Like maybe and I feel like sibling relationships and very, 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 very close friendships, like best friendships, are very similar. Um, and so maybe there are people in your life or siblings in your life that like you wouldn't necessarily like choose to be friends with, or maybe the age difference is so vast that like it's really hard to find something in common except the fact that like you have a parent or two in common. Um, and even as such, there could still be this feeling of like, well, like regardless your family, and like I'd still like fight to the death for you or whatever. Whereas you might not have that same type of response from a friend, best friend probably, right? Um, so just kind of taking a step back for a second and thinking of going deeper, not just friendships, but like deeper into like your immediate circle of like the first line of support that you would run to. What do you need from those people? And then thinking about like, hey, like, is this a conversation that I can have with this specific person? Like, can I talk to my mom about like, hey, you know what? You know, there were some things maybe that I really appreciated about like the way that you raised me or the way that you talked to me growing up. Now I'm an adult and I kind of like need a relationship to change a little bit, and this is maybe what I need it to look like. Maybe there's a little bit of distance between you and the sibling, and maybe you can bridge that gap somehow. Um, and maybe you feel like you need somebody who really understands like the way that you guys were raised or where you grew up, um, different types of things. And that would be a great place to get that type of fulfillment where it's like, hey, you know what? Like I can have like all of these friends and I can make all of these relationships that are like new as an adult, but like who is going to understand more about how how I came to be the way that I am without having to sit down with a you know new friend or total stranger or whatever, and talk to them about like, hey, so this is what you missed in the past 20, 30, 40 years of my life. So this is probably some of like the harder digging, to figure out like, okay, like what relationships do I have, that are that close inner circle, what parts am I fulfilled in and that I can foster more, and then what relationships are kind of lacking a little bit, and then how can we make those relationships kind of up to par to be a little bit more fulfilling for both of us, if that's feasible. And then if it's not feasible, then are there boundaries that have to be put into place, to just not look to that person for those specific things. I would suggest having this conversation with your therapist as well. Good luck.